A study published in the October issue of Pediatrics tackles the question of young children who go to the emergency room and whether or not there's any type of racial bias in the way that they're treated by doctors. Now, the researchers specifically looked at children that go in with severe stomach pain, and they wanted to see which children get pain medication and which children spend the longest amount of time in the emergency room. And the findings were really fascinating. So first, let's break down the demographics. They looked at the emergency room visits of people under the age of 21. 53% of them were white, 24% were non-Hispanic Black, and 21% were Hispanic. The rest were from other ethnic or racial groups. And I should also note that they looked at about 2,298 people specifically. Now, when it comes to the number of people receiving pain medication for their severe stomach pain, 27.1% of the white kids received the pain medication. Only 15.8% of Blacks did, 18.9% of Hispanics, and 7.1% of children of other races.
Wow. So to me, the other race is the one that actually stood out the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you're Asian or Indian or something, we're like, suck it up, you'll be all right.
Yeah. So let me jump in and say something really quickly. Now, these numbers are interesting, and of course, you can interpret them the way that you want to interpret them, but the researchers were quick to say that while racial bias might be a component in this, there are other factors at play. So maybe the white parents were quick to ask for the pain medication when they came in. Or, maybe in certain areas where the minority kids live, maybe the emergency room is more crowded, and as a result, it's more difficult for them to get out of there quickly. Okay, because if you look at, the average length of time a Black kid is in an emergency room, it's much longer than a white kid. It's usually around 6 hours, I believe.
So Black children were about 68% more likely than white children to spend longer than 6 hours in the emergency room.
Yep.
So, look, I agree with you, and with the researchers. I think that a lot of this could be a function of where those emergency rooms are, your socioeconomic condition, et cetera. But by the way, that also matters. I mean, so a lot of, a higher percentage of African Americans are born in socioeconomic conditions where they're not going to get pain medication. They're going to wait longer. Their kids are going to wait longer to get treatment, et cetera. And all of this has a cumulative effect. And, we hope that we live in a society where we care about that and we try to make it better. Now, on top, do I think there's some racial component to it? Look, you can't know for sure, but I know through my personal experience, I've known people in different contexts. Like, for example, in government, even if it's an African American who's responsible in that case, I've seen them say, take white people more seriously. Like, oh wait, that's a white person. Okay, wait, we got to be careful there, right? And I don't know what that's a function of. It could be, white people are in better socioeconomic condition and hence have more access to lawyers, can create trouble, et cetera. Whereas if you're powerless, and African Americans, Latinos more likely to be in a situation where they have less power, well then you're not going to get in trouble for mistreating them, so you put them to the back of the line. All these things are huge factors.
Yeah, so I think this is the difference between disparity and bias, right? Bias is kind of proactive racism. Disparity can be socioeconomic. And I think that the real difference here for the people reading this story, out there in the world, is if it's bias, people are in a position of helplessness, right? There is racism somewhere else. If it's disparity, then it's all of our problem. All of us can be thinking about urban issues and how we can help people in less socioeconomic, positive conditions, do better.
So that's really interesting, because what Adam's saying is that if it's racism from one particular person, there's not that much we can do about it. We can, if we find out about it, we can take corrective action, right? But if it's a disparity caused by the status of our society, then it's actually on us to fix it. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. They get uncomfortable if you say it's racism, but if it isn't racism, well, then it's more on you to do something
Right,
about it.
it's something that's fixable, which is why it's interesting to bring this up while the whole Obamacare debate's going on, because I'm sure that the people with less money have less access to health insurance, thus will be left in the emergency room longer. So hopefully, as more people get insurance, we'll see these numbers sort of even out.
And look, as a society, we can't even everything out, and that's the straw man argument that conservatives say about liberals. Oh, they want everybody to have the same exact thing. No, we don't. We understand that somebody's going to have a nicer car, somebody's not going to have a car or a cell phone or a house or all these, or sneakers or whatever, that are not as nice. That's life, right? There's rich folks, middle class, poor. We get it, right? But there are some things that everybody should have equal access to. For example, education. It's not fair if you say, oh, you're poor, well, you're going to stay poor forever because you're not going to get an education. We don't care about you. The rich people will tutor their kids like they used to in the old days. The lords would have tutors for their kids, right? And the poor wouldn't get an education. And by the way, society suffered greatly because of that. The minute, for example, Scotland turned to public education, lo and behold, all these geniuses come out of Scotland. Why? Because you expanded the base and you gave more people opportunity. It turns out they were geniuses all along. They just never had an opportunity. And I think healthcare is in that same boat where you say, you're really going to say, oh, that person is not as rich, so their kid should stay longer when he's in tremendous pain in the emergency room, or they shouldn't get the pain medication, whereas the richer people should get pain medication? Is that the kind of society we want to be? I don't think it is, and I think most Americans don't think it is. But unfortunately, in our political system, the rich have all the power, and so they've perverted it in a way where they direct it towards more individualism and not towards giving everybody the same opportunity, at least.